Psychology TV. With me today on the UK Riots is Zimbardo, Raisha and Milgram, who will be using the social theory to explain the UK riots that occurred August 2011. First of all, Zimbardo. You start. How would your own theories explain the UK riots that occurred London 2011?
Well, I would use the social attribution theory to say that it's a situation that causes the behaviour and not the individual factors. So anyone that was caught up in the riots would be likely to feel pressure into getting involved. They would also have a willingness to stay safe. They will not act against the majority. I would also use the idea of de-individuation, which is the loss of personal identity. That means the group members will act differently to how they would normally in their day-to-day lives. The larger the group became, the more extreme the behaviour. The individuals didn't feel that they would be prosecuted or held responsible for their actions.
Can you give us a specific example from the UK riots that supports your theory?
Well, an example. The millionaire's daughter who has no reason to take part in the riots herself, as she could easily afford anything that she loses. Her items including cigarettes and alcohol. There are also many high-status people, such as primary school teachers, who also got caught up in the situation and became an involved member of the riot group, completely losing his responsibility as a role model to the children.
Raisha, how would your own theories explain the UK riots?
Well, there are many ways in which you could explain the riots. One theory which I stand by is a simple explanation called the social learning theory, in which groups are categorised in various ways. In this case, you could call the groups perhaps the classes, the working class and the middle class. They're identified together because they're in the same situation, such as being in poverty or feeling segregated from the rest of society. They compare themselves to the other groups and often emphasise differences. They don't lose their identity when in the riots, but they think as part of a group membership, and they still have individual intentions such as thrill-seeking or political gain, but use the crowd as a cover so they can get away with things they wouldn't normally do.
Can you give us a specific example from the UK riots that supports your theory?
One way which I think could explain this theory is to think back to when Mark Duggan was first killed, and this made the group feel mistreated by the group, which were the police. The group gathered to demonstrate and were treated very hostile by the police, which cemented their unity and made them feel violent and empowered the group. And the ones that were not violent were generalised as violent and treated hostile as well, encouraging them to be violent as well.
Next, Milgram, how would your own theories explain the UK riots that occurred 2011?
Well, my views are very similar to that of my colleague Zimbardo. It sucks, because I'm better than he is. But I would also argue that it is dispositional factors that do not have as much of an effect as people would initially think. So I would argue that even though they appeared it, the rioters weren't all by heart violent, cold-blooded thugs. No. But instead, that situational factors, like the fact that everybody around them was rioting and looting, that caused them to join in. One, for the fear of being beaten up if they joined in. I never liked that hat anyway, it's fine. And secondly, they probably thought, oh, look, there's my neighbour stealing a brand new HD TV. I want one of those as well. So, why not? The police aren't doing anything, so, yes, riot.
Can you give a specific example from the UK riots that supports your theory?
Yes, I can. One example was the gentleman who remains unknown to the police, who was sprayed in the face with a fire extinguisher after trying to deter rioters. These people caught by the police were found to have no previous criminal convictions, the majority of them. And if people believe that any negative consequences of their behaviour can be passed on to anybody else, so the blame can be passed to those members of the group who would have previous convictions, or those members of the rioters who belonged to London gangs and were known to the police, then they're less likely to accept moral responsibility for their actions. So they are less likely to feel sorry for the man, and they're less likely to refrain from spraying him in the face with the fire extinguisher in the first place.
So, how would the social approach to psychology explain the UK riot?
Well, an assumption of the social approach is concerned with how we make sense of ourselves and how we judge others. For example, some of the newspapers were quick to judge certain sects of society, such as the black community or very young people.
Well, that was a valid point there by Zimbardo, but as well, social learning, social psychology is also concerned in the way in which our interactions with others affect the way we think, feel and behave. Such as when the rioters smashed a shop window, they were influenced by the other people doing it.
Well, another key assumption of the social approach is how we relate to people. It looks at how we relate to our fellow human beings. We can see that the rioters related negatively to authority figures such as the police by bombarding them with missiles, which included bricks and stones and just whatever they could loot from shops. However, as a group, they related to each other extremely well enough to run cities like London for up to 5 days. The rival gangs in London on the London Street Gangs website, organised by the police, who previously would have murdered each other, were now working together against the common enemy. So the social approach would explain these riots as people working together because they could relate to one another, and working against people they could not relate to at that time.
Thank you for joining us today at Psychology TV.
Called the social learning theory.
Really? I'm in front of Milgram. Milgram's in front of you. Milgram's theory. Milgram, my hat. Milgram. I never liked that hat anyway. It was fine.